I never expected that my cousin's best friend getting lost in my own two-bedroom apartment would change my life, but that's exactly what happened. It sounds impossible, I know. How do you get lost in a space that's barely 1,000 square feet? But sometimes, I think people aren't lost because they can't find a place, but because they're looking for one. My name is Miles. Back then, I was 26 and living a life that was, for lack of a better word, contained. I worked from home as a freelance copy editor, a job that suited my personality perfectly. My days were measured in manuscripts. My social interactions were largely digital, and my apartment was my fortress. It was a neat, orderly space filled with books stacked by color, a well-tended collection of houseplants, and the quiet hum of my laptop. It was safe. It was predictable. And, if I was being truly honest with myself in the dead of night, it was a little lonely. My cousin, Liam, was the exact opposite of contained. He was loud, expansive, and lived his life like a human exclamation point. We loved each other in the way that only cousins who grew up like brothers can, which is to say we fundamentally didn't understand each other, but would show up without question if one of us called. So, when he asked if he and his best friend could crash at my place for a long weekend while they attended some sports tournament in the city, I said yes. I tidied the guest room, braced myself for a temporary disruption of my peace, and prepared for the arrival of Liam and his legendary other half, Caleb. I'd met Caleb a few times over the years, at family barbecues or holiday gatherings. He was always just there, a fixed point in Liam's orbit. From my perspective, he was a member of a species I observed with anthropological fascination, the effortlessly confident, conventionally handsome straight guy. He had broad shoulders from years of swimming, a laugh that was easy and unforced, and a way of moving through the world as if he belonged in every room he entered. He was the kind of guy who seemed to be lit from within by some golden, uncomplicated light. And I, of course, was the guy in the corner, watching him, cataloging the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, and then promptly reminding myself that he existed in a completely different universe. They arrived on a Friday afternoon, bringing with them a tidal wave of duffel bags, takeout containers, and boisterous energy. Liam immediately took over the living room, flipping through channels on the TV while recounting some ridiculous story from their drive down. Caleb was quieter, more observant. He stood in the doorway for a moment, his eyes scanning my carefully curated bookshelves. "Wow, you have a lot of books," he said, his voice surprisingly gentle compared to Liam's booming presence. He offered me a small, genuine smile. "This is a really nice place, Miles." I felt a ridiculous flush creep up my neck. "Thanks. I like it quiet." It was a stupid thing to say, especially as his best friend was currently making my apartment sound like a stadium. Caleb just chuckled, a low, warm sound. I get that. For a split second, his gaze lingered on me, and I felt that familiar, pointless flutter in my chest. It was the kind of look that probably meant nothing, a simple acknowledgement, but in the quiet library of my mind, I cataloged it, filed it away under hopeless causes. He and Liam were a package deal, a whirlwind of masculine energy I was happy to host, but from which I felt distinctly separate. They were the party, and I was just the venue. That's how I saw it anyway. The weekend would be a brief, loud interruption, and then my life would return to its comfortable, solitary rhythm. I had no idea that the rhythm was about to be permanently altered. The first 24 hours went pretty much as I'd expected. My apartment, normally a sanctuary of quiet focus, became base camp for their weekend adventures. The air, usually smelling of old paper and fresh coffee, was now scented with sports drinks and the faint, lingering smell of whatever liniment they used for muscle aches. I'd retreat to my bedroom with my laptop, offering polite smiles as they came and went, a ghost in my own home. They'd talk about game strategy, old high school stories, and girls they knew. It was a constant, low-level reminder of the chasm between their world and mine. Then, on Saturday evening, the disruption was itself disrupted. Liam got a call. I was in the kitchen, making tea, and I could hear his side of the conversation becoming more urgent. It was his mom. His grandmother, who lived a few hours away, had taken a small fall. She was fine, apparently, but shaken up, and his mom was insistent that someone from the family go and stay with her for the night, just to be safe. Liam, being the dutiful son he was, immediately agreed. He hung up the phone and came into the kitchen, running a hand through his already messy hair. He looked genuinely stressed. Man, I am so sorry about this, Miles. Mom's kind of freaking out. I have to drive up to Grandma's tonight. Of course, I said immediately. Don't worry about it. Is she okay? Yeah, she's tough as nails, but you know how Mom gets. He paused, and a look of complication crossed his face. He glanced back toward the living room, where Caleb was scrolling on his phone, oblivious. Here's the thing, though. The tournament finals are tomorrow. Caleb can't miss it. Is it cool if he just stays here tonight? He can get a ride to the game with one of the other guys in the morning. I feel like a total jerk for bailing on him. My internal world went on high alert. Hosting Liam and Caleb was one thing. They were a self-contained unit. But being the sole host for Caleb? Just the two of us, alone in my apartment for an entire evening and night? My mind raced through a dozen scenarios, all of them saturated with a low-grade, humming anxiety. What would we talk about? What would we do? The silence that I normally cherished suddenly seemed like it would be cavernous and awkward. But you can't say no to something like that, right? It would be rude, inhospitable. It would require an explanation I didn't have. Yeah, of course, I heard myself say, my voice sounding much calmer than I felt. It's no problem at all. Seriously, Liam. Go. Don't worry about it. Liam's relief was palpable. He clapped me on the shoulder, a gesture so forceful it almost sent me into the counter. You're a lifesaver, man. Thanks. He went to explain the situation to Caleb, who took the news with his typical easygoing nature. He just nodded and told Liam not to worry, to drive safe. Within 15 minutes, Liam was gone. He'd grabbed a small overnight bag, promised to call with updates, and then the front door clicked shut behind him. And then, there was silence. A heavy, loaded silence. I was still in the kitchen, clutching my mug of now lukewarm tea. Caleb was still in the living room. It was just us. The carefully maintained boundary between my world and his had just been dissolved by a single phone call, and I had absolutely no idea how to navigate the space that was left. The silence stretched for what felt like an hour, but was probably only 30 seconds. I could hear the faint buzz of the refrigerator, the distant sound of traffic outside my window. I was acutely aware of Caleb in the other room, of his presence filling the space Liam had vacated. My mind was a frantic scramble. Should I say something? Suggest something? Or should I just retreat to my room and cede the common areas to him for the rest of the night? That felt like the safest option. Just as I was about to execute my disappearing act, Caleb spoke from the living room, his voice pulling me back. So, he started, and I peeked around the doorframe to see him looking over at me. I guess it's just us. He had a small, almost apologetic smile on his face. Sorry you got stuck with me. It's not a problem at all, I said, the automatic politeness kicking in. Do you, want anything? A drink? Tea? He shook his head. I'm good, but I'm starving. Liam was supposed to be on dinner duty. You hungry? The question was simple, direct. It was an invitation to interact, to bridge the awkward gap between us. My self-preservation instinct screamed at me to say I'd already eaten, but a quieter, more curious voice won out. Yeah, I could eat, I admitted. Cool. What's good around here? I'll order. He picked up his phone, his posture relaxing as he settled into a new task. And just like that, the tension eased. We spent the next 10 minutes debating the merits of Thai versus pizza, a mundane conversation that felt monumental in its normalcy. We settled on Thai food, and as he placed the order, I found myself slowly migrating from the kitchen doorway to one of the armchairs in the living room. It felt like a tiny victory. While we waited for the food, the conversation started to drift. It began with the tournament, a topic I knew nothing about, but Caleb was a good storyteller. He didn't just talk about the sport. He talked about the people, the dynamics of the team, the funny things that happened in the locker room. I found myself genuinely listening, asking questions. He had a way of making you feel included, even if you were on the outside. Then he surprised me. He gestured again to my bookshelves. So, you're a big reader, he said. It wasn't a question. Liam said you're an editor. That must be cool, working with words all day. I shrugged, a little self-consciously. It's quiet work. Probably boring to most people. No, I don't think so, he said, and he sounded sincere. I think it takes a lot of focus. I'm not good at that. My mind's always jumping around. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, and his expression turned more introspective. I try to write sometimes. Just stuff. Like poems, I guess. It's stupid, he looked away, as if embarrassed to have admitted it. It felt like the world tilted slightly on its axis. Caleb, the confident athlete, the guy I'd filed away as a simple, sporty type, wrote poetry. It was a detail so unexpected, so contrary to the image I'd built of him, that I was momentarily speechless. This was a piece of him that didn't fit. It was a vulnerability, a crack in the polished facade, and it was utterly fascinating. That's not stupid at all, I said, and my voice was softer than before. I'd be interested to read something sometime, if you'd ever want to share. He looked up at me, a flicker of surprise in his eyes, followed by a real, unguarded smile. It was different from his easy, public smile. This one was smaller, more genuine. Yeah? Maybe. Thanks, Miles. The food arrived shortly after that, breaking the spell, but something had shifted between us. He wasn't just Liam's best friend anymore. He was Caleb, a person with hidden layers and a secret creative life. We ate sitting on the floor, the food containers spread out on my coffee table. We put on a movie, some action flick that neither of us was paying much attention to. Instead, we kept talking. He asked me about my work, about the kinds of books I liked to read. I asked him about his poetry, about when he started. The conversation flowed easily, naturally. At one point, we both reached for the last spring roll at the same time, our fingers brushing against each other. It was a tiny, fleeting contact, but a jolt of electricity shot up my arm. I pulled my hand back quickly, my heart hammering in my chest. He didn't say anything, just gave me a small, unreadable look before pushing the plate toward me. "You take it," he said quietly. That small, insignificant moment felt charged with a meaning I couldn't decipher, and it hung in the air between us for the rest of the evening. We weren't just two guys sharing a meal anymore. We were two people, acutely aware of each other in a new and complicated way. As the movie credits rolled, a comfortable quiet settled over the room. The initial awkwardness of the evening had been replaced by a low, simmering warmth. It was late, past midnight, and the city outside had grown quiet. I could feel the pull of exhaustion, but I was reluctant to end the night. It felt fragile, this connection we'd stumbled into, and I was afraid that going to our separate rooms would shatter it. Caleb stretched, his arms reaching up toward the ceiling, the fabric of his t-shirt pulling tight across his chest. "Man, I should probably hit the sack," he said, his voice a little rough with tiredness. "Big day tomorrow." "Yeah," I said, my own voice quiet. "The guest room should be all set. Towels are on the dresser." I stood up, collecting the empty food containers, my movements suddenly feeling clumsy and self-conscious again. The spell was breaking. We were heading back to our designated corners. "Cool. Thanks again, Miles. For everything." He gave me another one of those small, genuine smiles before disappearing down the short hallway to the guest room, the room Liam had been using. I heard the door click shut. I finished tidying the living room, my mind replaying our entire evening. The conversation, the shared laughter, the brush of our hands. It was all probably nothing. Just a friendly evening. I was reading too much into it, projecting my own secret hopes onto his kindness. That's what I told myself as I went through my own nightly routine, brushing my teeth and changing into a pair of comfortable pajama pants and an old t-shirt. I climbed into my queen-sized bed, the familiar comfort of my own space feeling different tonight. It felt bigger, emptier. I could hear the faint, ambient noises of the apartment building, sounds I normally tuned out. Tonight, I was listening for something else. The creak of floorboards from the other room, the sound of a faucet. But there was only silence. I turned off my bedside lamp, plunging the room into darkness, and tried to force my racing mind to shut down. I don't know how long I'd been asleep. It might have been an hour, it might have been 3, but I was woken by a sound. The soft creak of my bedroom door opening. My heart leaped into my throat. My first thought was groggy and panicked, an intruder. I lay perfectly still, my eyes wide open in the dark, trying to make out a shape in the doorway. A silhouette stood there, backlit by the faint glow of the hallway nightlight. It was Caleb. He stood there for a long moment, unmoving. I held my breath, my mind a complete blank. What was happening? Then, he took a slow step into the room, and another. He moved with a strange, hesitant deliberation. He wasn't walking like someone who was confident. He was walking like someone who was lost. He whispered my name, so softly it was almost part of the silence. "Miles." My voice was a dry croak. Caleb? What's wrong? Are you okay? He came closer to the bed. I could just make out his features now. He looked exhausted and uncertain. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry to wake you. I couldn't sleep. I don't know. The other room feels weird. Empty. He ran a hand over his face. This is so stupid. I got up to get some water, and I think I sort of missed my room. He said it like a confession. Missed my room. My brain tried to process it. He meant he'd walked into the wrong room by mistake, that he was disoriented. That had to be it. The guest room is the other one, I said gently, starting to sit up. No, I know, he said quickly, his voice still a low whisper. I know. I ended up here. He looked at the empty side of my bed, a wide expanse of navy blue comforter. His gaze was fixed on it. The silence in the room was electric, thick with unspoken things. My heart was pounding a frantic, desperate rhythm against my ribs. This was the moment. A precipice. And I had no idea which way we were going to fall. He finally looked at me, his eyes pleading in the dim light. This is going to sound crazy, but can I just stay in here? I can sleep on the floor. I won't bother you. I don't want to be in that other room alone. Every rational thought in my head screamed that this was a bad idea, that it crossed a line, that I was setting myself up for some kind of massive emotional fall. But the sight of him standing there, looking so lost and vulnerable, overrode everything. He wasn't the confident athlete from my preconceived notions. He was just a person seeking a little bit of comfort in the middle of the night. How could I say no to that? You don't have to sleep on the floor, I heard myself say, the words feeling like they belonged to someone braver than me. I shifted over, pulling the comforter back on the empty side of the bed. There's plenty of room. The relief that washed over his face was visible even in the darkness. Are you sure? He whispered. I just nodded, unable to speak. He moved around the bed and slid under the covers. He was just wearing boxers and a t-shirt, and the bed dipped with his weight. He lay on his back, stiffly, a respectable foot of space between us. But I could feel his body heat across the gap. I could smell the clean, simple scent of his soap. The air was charged with his proximity. We lay there in the dark, two bodies sharing one space, not touching, but more connected than I had ever felt to anyone in my entire life. I lay there, rigid, listening to the sound of his breathing, which slowly, gradually, evened out as he fell asleep. I, on the other hand, did not sleep again for the rest of the night. I just lay awake, suspended in a state of terror and pure, unadulterated hope. The first hint of dawn crept through my window, casting long, gray shadows across the room. I had spent the entire night in a state of hyper-awareness, cataloging every tiny sound, every shift in weight. Caleb had, at some point in the deep of the night, turned onto his side, facing me. In his sleep, his arm had drifted across the space between us, his hand coming to rest on the mattress just inches from my chest. I watched the slow, steady rise and fall of his shoulders, listened to his quiet breathing, and felt like my own lungs had forgotten how to work. As the light grew stronger, I knew the moment was coming. He would wake up, and when he did, this fragile, surreal bubble would pop. What would happen then? Would he recoil in embarrassment? Would he laugh it off as a weird, sleepy mistake? Would he pretend it never happened at all? My mind spun with 1,000 possibilities, each one more anxiety-inducing than the last. I was terrified of the morning. His eyes fluttered open slowly, blinking against the new light. For a moment, they were unfocused, still clouded with sleep. Then, they found mine. Recognition dawned, and with it, a wave of complicated emotions. I saw confusion, then awareness, then a deep, unreadable flush that crept up from his neck. He became instantly, intensely aware of our proximity, of his hand lying between us. He snatched it back as if the mattress were hot, pulling his arm tight to his body. "Oh God," he breathed, his voice thick with sleep and something else. Mortification, maybe. He pushed himself up, scrambling backwards until his back hit the headboard. "Miles, I'm so sorry. I don't know what." He couldn't seem to finish a sentence. He just sat there, looking at me, his face a mask of conflict. "It's okay," I said, my voice barely a whisper. The words felt hollow, automatic. It wasn't okay. Everything was different now. The air between us was so thick with unspoken things I felt like I could barely breathe. He shook his head. not looking at me anymore, instead staring down at the rumpled comforter. No, it's not. It was. I shouldn't have. I made you uncomfortable. He swung his legs out of the bed and stood up abruptly. He wouldn't look at me. I'm just gonna. I'll get my stuff from the other room. He fled. He didn't walk out of the room. He fled, disappearing down the hall and closing the guest room door behind him with a soft, final click. I was left alone in my bed, the space where he had been still holding the faint warmth of his body. The silence he left behind was deafening. I flopped back against my pillows, my heart feeling like a lead weight in my chest. So that was it. I had been right. It was a mistake, an embarrassment. I had opened up a small, hopeful part of myself, and the morning light had revealed it to be nothing more than a foolish dream. I felt a profound sense of humiliation wash over me. He probably thought I was pathetic. I lay there for a long time, just staring at the ceiling, replaying the entire night, the entire previous evening. I analyzed every word, every look, every gesture. His confession about his poetry, the way he'd smiled, the brush of our hands, the vulnerable look on his face in my doorway, and then the morning, the panic in his eyes, the hasty retreat. My internal monologue was a vicious tug of war. Hope would whisper, but he came to your room. He chose to be near you. Then fear would scream back, and he ran away the second he woke up. He was embarrassed to be near you. Eventually, the smell of coffee brewing pulled me from my paralysis. He was in the kitchen. I had to face him. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the excruciating awkwardness that was to come. I imagined the stilted conversation, the careful avoidance of eye contact, the polite countdown until his ride arrived, and he was gone from my life for good, leaving me with nothing but this raw, tender memory. I pulled on a pair of jeans, my hands feeling clumsy and disconnected from my body, and walked out to face the music. He was standing by the counter, his back to me, pouring coffee into 2 mugs. My mugs. He must have heard me enter, but he didn't turn around right away. He just stood there for a moment, his shoulders tense. The silence was agonizing. I was about to mumble something about needing to take a shower when he finally spoke, his voice quiet but clear. "We need to talk," he said, still not looking at me. "Before my ride gets here." My stomach plummeted. This was it. The "let's just forget this ever happened" speech. The "I'm not gay, but I appreciate the friendship" talk. I braced myself for the impact. "Okay," I managed to say, my throat tight. He finally turned around, a mug of coffee in each hand. He walked over to the small kitchen table and set them down. He looked exhausted. The easy confidence that was so much a part of him was completely gone, replaced by a raw, anxious vulnerability that mirrored my own. He gestured to the other chair, and I sat, my legs feeling unsteady. He sat across from me, wrapping his hands around his mug but not drinking. He stared into it, as if it held the answers to the universe. "Look," he started, his voice low and strained. "About last night, and this morning." I acted like an idiot. I panicked. I just nodded, not trusting myself to speak. "I need you to know," he continued, finally lifting his eyes to meet mine. They were filled with an earnest, desperate intensity. I didn't end up in your room by accident. I didn't miss my way." The words hit me with the force of a physical blow. I just stared at him, my mind struggling to catch up. "What?" A deep, shaky breath escaped him. "I knew exactly where I was going," he confessed, his voice cracking slightly. "I went to the guest room, and I lay there in the dark, and all I could think about was you, in the other room. All I could think about was our conversation, and how easy it was to talk to you. How I felt." He trailed off, struggling for the right word. "Seen. Or something. I don't know." He looked down again, a flush coloring his cheeks. "I've been confused for a while, Miles. About a lot of things. I've spent my whole life being the person everyone expects me to be. The athlete. Liam's best friend. The fun guy. And it's not that it's a lie, exactly. It's just not the whole story. And last night, talking to you, I felt like I could just be the whole story. And it scared the hell out of me." He took a breath and pushed on, the words tumbling out now as if a dam had broken. "So I came to your room. It was a stupid, impulsive thing to do. I just wanted to be near you. I thought if I could just be in the same space, maybe I could figure some of this out. Then I fell asleep, and when I woke up and we were right there, I freaked out. I thought I'd crossed a massive line. I thought you'd hate me." I listened to his confession, my own fear and anxiety slowly dissolving. replaced by a wave of staggering, overwhelming relief. He wasn't disgusted. He wasn't embarrassed by me. He was scared, just like I was. All the overthinking, all the internal torment, it was all based on a false premise. We were both just standing on opposite sides of the same chasm of fear, neither one of us knowing the other was just as terrified to fall. I finally found my voice. "I didn't hate you," I said, and the words were thick with emotion. "I thought you hated me." His head snapped up, his eyes wide with surprise. "What? Why would you think that?" "Because you ran," I said simply. I thought I was just some pathetic guy you felt sorry for, and you couldn't get away fast enough." A soft, humorless laugh escaped him. "God, no. Miles." It was the opposite. He reached across the table then, his movements hesitant but deliberate. He placed his hand over mine, his fingers warm and firm. It wasn't an accidental brush this time. It was an anchor. "I like you," he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper, but his gaze was steady, unwavering. "I really, really like you. And it terrifies me. But I think I'm more terrified of walking out that door and pretending none of this happened." In that moment, all the noise in my head went quiet. There was no more fear, no more doubt. There was only the warmth of his hand on mine and the truth in his eyes. I turned my hand over and laced my fingers with his. "I really like you, too," I admitted, and saying it out loud felt like coming home. A slow, brilliant smile spread across his face. It was the best one yet. It was full of relief and hope and 1,000 other things I couldn't wait to discover. The tension didn't just break, it evaporated. And in its place was the beginning of something new. He leaned forward, and I met him halfway. The kiss we shared over the cold coffee mugs was nothing like I'd imagined. It wasn't frantic or desperate. It was quiet and gentle and sure. It was a question and an answer all at once. A mutual acknowledgement that we had, against all odds, found our way to the same place. The arrival of Caleb's ride an hour later was no longer a dreaded deadline, but a gentle interruption. We stood at the door, the awkwardness from the morning a distant memory. It was replaced by a new, exciting kind of shyness. When Liam called to check in, Caleb just told him the tournament final would have to happen without him this time. He said something had come up. He was staying. The quiet decision, made so easily, spoke volumes. The days that followed were a gentle unfolding. With Liam away for a few more days, we had the apartment to ourselves. It became our bubble, a space outside of time where we could get to know this new version of us. We went on our first real date, a walk through a park in the crisp autumn air, our hands intertwined in his jacket pocket. We talked for hours, filling in the sketches we had of each other with vibrant, detailed color. I learned about his complicated relationship with his father, his secret love for old black and white movies, and the fears that kept him up at night. He learned about my quiet ambitions, my tendency to overthink everything, and the loneliness I rarely admitted even to myself. When Liam finally returned, he walked into an apartment that was subtly, but irrevocably, changed. He found us in the kitchen, not on opposite sides of the room, but standing close, laughing over something stupid as I tried to teach Caleb how to cook something that wasn't scrambled eggs. The confusion on Liam's face was immediate, but it quickly melted into a slow, dawning understanding. To his credit, he just raised an eyebrow, smiled, and said, "Well, it's about time one of you made a move apparently. We hadn't been as subtle as we'd thought." Weeks turned into a month, then 2. Caleb never really moved his things out of the guest room, but he never slept in there again. It became a storage space for his duffel bag and a testament to the night everything changed. My apartment, once my solitary fortress, became our shared home. The quiet wasn't lonely anymore. It was peaceful, comfortable. It was the sound of two people sharing a life, the soft turn of pages next to the rhythmic tap of his keyboard as he worked on his poetry. One evening, months later, we were lying in bed, our bed, reading in the soft glow of the bedside lamps. It was a comfortable, familiar scene, one that had become the new rhythm of my life. Caleb put his book down and turned to me, a playful glint in his eye. "You know," he said, his voice a low murmur, "I was thinking about that first night." I smiled. "Oh yeah. I feel kind of bad for that guest room," he mused, tracing a pattern on my arm with his finger. "It never stood a chance, did it?" I laughed, a full, happy sound that filled the quiet space between us. I leaned over and kissed him, a kiss full of the easy intimacy we had built together, brick by brick, since that first terrifying, hopeful night. "No," I said against his lips. "It really didn't. It's funny how life works, isn't it? You can spend years building walls around your heart, creating a safe, predictable routine, believing you know exactly who you are and what your life will be. You think you're in control. But all it really takes is one person, one unexpected moment of vulnerability, one guest who supposedly loses his way in the middle of the night. I never thought that my cousin's best friend getting lost in my apartment would change my life. But he didn't just find his way to my room that night. He found his way to me. And in doing so, he helped me find my way back to a part of myself I thought was lost for good. Sometimes, getting lost is how you finally get found.